Ladies and gentlemen, one of the greatest forms of slavery is not physical bondage, it is emotional bondage. It is when other people have the power to control your peace, dictate your mood, and determine your reactions. Think about it. If someone's words can make you angry, if someone's behavior can ruin your day, then who is really in control of your life? Today, I want to share a powerful principle that transformed my understanding of human relationships. Mature people do not allow external circumstances to govern their internal state. True freedom begins when you stop giving people permission to disturb your peace. My message today is titled, How to Never Get Angry or Bothered by Anyone. This is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming so secure in your purpose, so confident in your identity, and so disciplined in your thinking that no person can manipulate your emotions or steal your joy. The strongest person in the room is not the loudest, the richest, or the most powerful. The strongest person is the one who remains calm when everyone else loses control. One of the most important truths you can ever learn in life is that people can only control you if you give them permission. Many individuals spend years blaming others for their anger, frustration, disappointment, and emotional pain. They say, "He made me angry," "She ruined my day," or "They upset me." But if we look deeper, we discover something powerful. No one can enter your mind and force you to feel a certain way. What they say or do may create a stimulus, but your reaction is still your choice. Imagine someone insults you. Their words leave their mouth and travel through the air. Those words have no power by themselves. The real question is what happens after those words reach your ears. Do you accept them? Do you believe them? Do you allow them to occupy your thoughts? Do you replay them repeatedly in your mind? The moment you do, you have given that person access to your emotional state. You have handed them a key to a door that only you were supposed to control. Many people are living under emotional dictatorship. Their happiness depends on how others treat them. If people praise them, they feel valuable. If people criticize them, they feel worthless. If people agree with them, they feel confident. If people reject them, they feel defeated. Such a person is not truly free because their emotions are controlled by external circumstances. They have unknowingly surrendered their power. A mature person understands that self-control is one of the highest forms of strength. They recognize that while they cannot control everyone's behavior, they can control their response. They understand that people may misunderstand them, criticize them, ignore them, disappoint them, or even betray them. But none of those actions have the authority to determine their peace of mind. That authority belongs to them alone. The problem is that many people have been conditioned to react automatically. Someone speaks harshly, and they immediately become angry. Someone disagrees with them, and they instantly become defensive. Someone succeeds where they fail, and they become jealous. These reactions happen so quickly that they feel unavoidable, yet every reaction is preceded by a decision, even if that decision occurs within seconds. The secret is learning to slow down enough to recognize that choice. When you understand your value, you become less dependent on other people's approval. A person who knows who they are cannot easily be shaken by criticism. They may listen to feedback and learn from it, but they do not allow negative opinions to define them. They understand that people's words often reveal more about the speaker than about the target. An angry person speaks from anger. An insecure person speaks from insecurity. A bitter person speaks from bitterness. Their words are frequently reflections of their own condition, rather than accurate descriptions of yours. Consider how much energy people waste trying to change everyone around them. They want difficult people to become easy, rude people to become polite, and selfish people to become considerate. But the reality is that you cannot control another human being. The only person you can truly manage is yourself. The moment you stop trying to control others and start mastering your own responses, life becomes much lighter. There is also great power in refusing to take everything personally. Not every comment is an attack. Not every disagreement is disrespect. Not every rejection is a statement about your worth. Sometimes people are simply having a bad day. Sometimes they are dealing with struggles you know nothing about. Sometimes their actions have little to do with you at all. When you stop making yourself the center of every negative situation, you free yourself from unnecessary emotional burdens. True emotional freedom comes when you realize that your peace is your responsibility. No one can steal it unless you hand it over. No one can occupy your thoughts unless you invite them in. No one can determine your emotional state unless you surrender that authority. The strongest people are not those who never face criticism, conflict, or negativity. The strongest people are those who encounter all of these things and still remain in control of themselves. When you refuse to give people permission to control your emotions, something remarkable happens. Insults lose their power. Criticism becomes easier to evaluate objectively. Rejection becomes easier to accept. Conflict becomes easier to navigate. You stop reacting to everything and start responding with wisdom. Instead of being driven by emotions, you've become guided by principles. Instead of allowing others to determine your mood, you determine it yourself. That is the moment you move from emotional slavery to emotional freedom, and it is one of the greatest victories a person can ever achieve. One of the greatest reasons people become angry, offended, or emotionally disturbed by others is that they have built their identity on unstable foundations. When your sense of worth depends on what people think about you, every opinion becomes a threat. Every criticism feels like an attack. Every rejection feels like a personal defeat. Every disagreement feels like disrespect. This is why a strong identity is essential if you want to live a life that is not controlled by the behavior of others. Your identity is your understanding of who you are. It is the picture you carry of yourself when nobody is applauding you, encouraging you, or validating you. The problem is that many people have allowed society, family, friends, co-workers, and even strangers to define them. They spend their lives looking into the mirrors of other people's opinions instead of discovering their true value. As a result, their confidence rises and falls according to the reactions of those around them. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly seek approval. If someone praises you, you feel successful. If someone criticizes you, you feel discouraged. If people accept you, you feel important. If they reject you, you question your worth. In such a condition, your emotional stability becomes dependent on people who may not even know you well. You become vulnerable to every passing opinion, and your peace becomes fragile. A person with a weak identity is easily offended because they are always trying to protect an image that depends on external validation. They are constantly looking for confirmation that they matter. Therefore, when someone challenges them, disagrees with them, or fails to recognize their value, they react emotionally. The issue is often not what was said, but what it touched inside them. When identity is insecure, even small comments can create large emotional reactions. A strong identity changes everything. When you know who you are, criticism no longer has the power to destroy you. This does not mean you become arrogant or refuse correction. It means you are secure enough to evaluate feedback without allowing it to define you. You can listen objectively, learn what is useful, and discard what is not. Your confidence remains intact because it is rooted in something deeper than the opinions of others. Many successful individuals have faced criticism through our lives. Every leader, entrepreneur, innovator, and visionary has encountered people who doubted them. If they had allowed those opinions to determine their identity, they would never have accomplished anything significant. The reason they continued moving forward was not because everyone believed in them, but because they believed in themselves. Their identity was stronger than the voices around them. One of the signs of emotional maturity is the ability to remain calm when others misunderstand you. Not everyone will understand your intentions, your goals, your decisions, or your journey. Some people will judge you based on limited information. Others will form opinions without knowing the full story. If your identity depends on being understood by everyone, you will spend your life frustrated. But when you are secure in who you are, you no longer need universal approval to maintain inner peace. It is also important to recognize that people often judge through the lens of their own experiences, fears, and limitations. Their opinions are not always accurate reflections of reality. Someone may underestimate you because they cannot imagine achieving what you are trying to achieve. Someone may criticize your decisions because they would not have the courage to make them themselves. Someone may project their insecurities onto you and call them facts. If you allow every opinion to shape your identity, you will become confused about who you really are. Strong identity comes from understanding your values, your purpose, your strengths, and your principles. It comes from spending time developing your character rather than managing your image. Character is who you are. Image is what people think you are. Character creates stability because it is internal. Image creates instability because it depends on external perception. The more you focus on character, the less control other people's opinions have over your emotions. There is a freedom that comes when you stop living for applause. You no longer feel pressured to impress everyone. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer feel devastated by criticism or obsessed with approval. You become focused on growth instead of validation. You begin making decisions based on principles rather than popularity. People's opinions will always change. Someone who praises you today may criticize you tomorrow. Someone who supports you today may oppose you in the future. If your identity is built on their approval, your confidence will constantly rise and fall. But if your identity is grounded in a clear understanding of who you are and what you stand for, you remain steady regardless of external reactions. When your identity becomes stronger than other people's opinions, you gain emotional independence. You stop allowing praise to inflate your ego and criticism to destroy your confidence. You become less reactive, less defensive, and less easily offended. Instead of being controlled by the voices around you, you are guided by the convictions within you. That is true strength, and it is one of the most powerful ways to ensure that no person has the ability to steal your peace or control your emotional state. A large percentage of the anger, disappointment, and frustration people experience in life can be traced back to one source: expectations. Many individuals believe their suffering is caused by other people, but often it is caused by the gap between what they expected and what actually happened. The greater the gap, the greater the frustration. This is why expectation is often the mother of frustration. Human beings naturally create expectations. We expect people to behave according to our standards. We expect friends to always be loyal, family members to always be understanding, co-workers to always be cooperative, and strangers to always be respectful. We create pictures in our minds about how situations should unfold and how people should act. The problem begins when reality refuses to follow the script we have written. Consider how many arguments begin with unspoken expectations. A person expects appreciation but receives silence. They expect support but encounter indifference. They expect respect but experience criticism. They expect fairness but face disappointment. In each case, the emotional pain is intensified because reality failed to match expectation. The anger is not only about what happened, it is also about what was expected to happen but never did. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that others think the same way they do. They believe that because they would act a certain way, everyone else should act that way as well. They measure others according to their own values, priorities, and standards. When people fail to meet those expectations, frustration follows. Yet every person is different. They have different experiences, different levels of maturity, different priorities, and different ways of viewing the world. A wise person understands this reality and adjusts accordingly. They recognize that people are human. Humans make mistakes. Humans forget. Humans disappoint. Humans sometimes act selfishly, emotionally, or irrationally. This understanding does not excuse bad behavior, but it helps prevent unrealistic expectations from creating unnecessary emotional suffering. Many people set themselves up for disappointment because they expect perfection from imperfect people. They expect everyone to always say the right thing, make the right decision, and respond in the right way. But perfection does not exist in human relationships. The moment you demand perfection from people, you guarantee frustration because no one can consistently meet that standard. This principle applies not only to others but also to life itself. People become angry because they expected life to be easy. They expected success to come quickly. They expected hard work to always be rewarded immediately. They expected every opportunity to work out exactly as planned. When life presents obstacles, delays, setbacks, and challenges, they become discouraged because reality violated their expectations. The keys to emotional freedom is not eliminating all expectations, but managing them wisely. Healthy expectations are grounded in reality. Unrealistic expectations are grounded in fantasy. Healthy expectations recognize human limitations. Unrealistic expectations ignore them. When your expectations become more realistic, your frustration naturally decreases. Another important lesson is learning the difference between expectations and agreements. Many people silently expect things from others without ever communicating those expectations. Then they become angry when those expectations are not fulfilled. The other person may not even know what was expected of them. This creates unnecessary conflict because one side is reacting to an invisible standard that was never clearly expressed. Maturity involves communicating clearly rather than assuming others can read your mind. It involves understanding that expectations hidden in your thoughts cannot automatically become obligations for other people. The clearer your communication, the fewer misunderstandings you create. There is also tremendous peace in learning to appreciate people for who they are rather than constantly demanding they become who you want them to be. When you spend your life trying to force others to fit your expectations, you create endless frustration. When you accept reality and deal with people as they are, you gain greater emotional stability. Acceptance does not mean approval of everything they do. It means acknowledging reality and fighting against it. Many offenses disappear when expectations are reduced. You become less shocked by human weakness because you recognize that everyone is still growing. You become less offended by mistakes because you understand that imperfection is part of the human experience. You become less disturbed by criticism because you no longer expect universal agreement. You become less frustrated by delays because you understand that life does not always operate according to your timetable. This mindset creates resilience. Instead of being emotionally devastated every time reality differs from your expectations, you adapt. You remain flexible. You focus on what you can control rather than obsessing over what you cannot. You stop demanding that life and people constantly conform to your preferences. When expectations are excessive, frustration increases. When expectations are balanced by wisdom, understanding, and realism, emotional peace increases. The goal is not to expect nothing from life or from people. The goal is to avoid building your emotional stability on assumptions that reality may never fulfill. The person who understands this principle gains a tremendous advantage. They are less reactive, less offended, and less disappointed by everyday interactions. They understand that much of their frustration is not created by events themselves, but by the expectations attached to those events. By managing expectations wisely, they remove one of the greatest sources of anger and emotional disturbance, allowing them to navigate life with greater patience, understanding, and peace. One of the greatest misconceptions in modern society is the belief that strength is found in expressing every emotion exactly as it is felt. Many people believe that if they are angry, they must immediately show it. If they are offended, they must instantly react. If they are frustrated, they must make sure everyone knows about it. They view emotional expression as evidence of authenticity and emotional control as weakness. However, the reality is quite different. Emotional mastery is far greater than emotional expression. Every human being experiences emotions. Anger, disappointment, frustration, fear, sadness, and excitement are all natural parts of life. The goal is not to eliminate emotions because emotions serve important purposes. They provide information about our experiences and help us understand our reactions to events around us. The challenge is not having emotions. The challenge is allowing emotions to control our decisions, words, and behavior. Many people confuse feeling an emotion with obeying an emotion. These are two completely different things. Feeling anger is natural. Being controlled by anger is a choice. Feeling offended may happen automatically. Remaining offended and acting from that offense is another matter entirely. Emotional maturity begins when a person learns to separate what they feel from how they respond. Imagine a captain navigating a ship through a violent storm. The waves are powerful, the winds are strong, and the conditions are difficult. The captain cannot stop the storm from existing, but they can control how the ship responds to it. In the same way, you cannot always control the emotions that arise within you, but you can control whether those emotions become the captain of your life or remain passengers. Many of life's biggest regrets are born from emotional reactions. Relationships are damaged because of words spoken in anger. Opportunities are lost because of impulsive decisions. Friendships end because people react before thinking. Careers are harmed because individuals allow temporary emotions to produce permanent consequences. In many cases, the problem is not the emotion itself, but the absence of emotional mastery. Emotional expression without wisdom can be destructive. A person may feel justified in expressing their anger, but that does not automatically make the expression beneficial. There is a significant difference between expressing emotions constructively and releasing them recklessly. One builds relationships, the other destroys them. One solves problems, the other creates new ones. The strongest people are not those who never feel intense emotions. The strongest people are those who remain in control while experiencing intense emotions. Anyone can stay calm when everything is going well. The true test of character appears when circumstances become difficult. Can you remain respectful when disrespected? Can you remain patient when provoked? Can you remain thoughtful when angry? These are the moments that reveal emotional mastery. Unfortunately, society often celebrates reaction more than restraint. People are encouraged to respond immediately, defend themselves instantly, and retaliate quickly. Social media has amplified this tendency. Many individuals react before reflecting, speak before thinking, and judge before understanding. Yet wisdom often requires the opposite approach. Wisdom pauses, wisdom evaluates. Wisdom considers consequences before taking action. One of the most powerful abilities a person can develop is the ability to create space between stimulus and response. Something happens, someone says something offensive, someone criticizes you unfairly, someone disappoints you. In that moment, there is a gap between the event and your reaction. Most people move through that gap so quickly that they never notice it exists. Emotion takes control and reaction follows. Emotional mastery occurs when you learn to use that space intentionally. Within that space, you ask important questions. Is this worth my energy? Will this reaction improve the situation? What outcome do I want to achieve? Am I responding from wisdom or from wounded pride? These questions transform emotional experiences from automatic reactions into deliberate responses. Another important aspect of emotional mastery is understanding that emotions are temporary. Many people make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. They quit, argue, retaliate, or destroy relationships because of emotions that may disappear within hours or days. Emotions are real, but they are not always reliable guides for action. Feelings change, circumstances change, perspectives change. Therefore, wise people do not allow temporary emotional states to dictate long-term decisions. Emotional mastery also protects personal peace. When you react to everything, you become vulnerable to everyone. Every criticism affects you. Every disagreement disturbs you. Every negative comment steals your attention. You become emotionally exhausted because your inner world is constantly being controlled by external events. Mastery breaks this cycle. It allows you to choose what deserves your attention and what does not. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending they do not exist. Healthy emotional mastery acknowledges feelings honestly while refusing to become their servant. It allows you to experience anger without becoming angry in your behavior. It allows you to experience disappointment without surrendering to bitterness. It allows you to experience frustration without losing self-control. True power is not demonstrated by how loudly you can express your emotions. True power is demonstrated by how effectively you can govern them. Anyone can react, anyone can explode, anyone can lose control, but it takes discipline, wisdom, and strength to remain composed when emotions are demanding control. That ability separates those who are ruled by circumstances from those who rule themselves. And it is one of the most valuable skills a person can develop in the pursuit of lasting peace and emotional freedom. One of the most effective ways to reduce anger toward people is to understand them. Many conflicts, frustrations, and emotional reactions are fueled not by what people do alone, but by our lack of understanding of why they do it. When we fail to understand people, we often assume the worst about their intentions. We interpret their actions through our own emotions, and as a result, irritation grows into anger. Understanding does not always remove pain, but it often removes unnecessary hostility. Human beings are complex. Every person you meet is carrying experiences, disappointments, fears, insecurities, habits, beliefs, and struggles that you may know nothing about. Yet many people judge others based on a single interaction, a single comment, or a single mistake. They create conclusions without knowing the full story. The danger of this approach is that incomplete information often leads to inaccurate judgments. Imagine meeting someone who is rude, impatient, or short-tempered. Your first reaction may be to feel offended or angry. You may immediately conclude that they are arrogant, disrespectful, or inconsiderate. But what if that person is dealing with a serious family crisis? What if they are carrying emotional burdens that have overwhelmed them? What if they are facing pressures that have affected their ability to interact normally? This does not excuse their behavior, but it provides context that can change your response. Understanding people helps you separate behavior from identity. Many individuals are not intentionally trying to hurt others. They are often acting out of their own wounds, fears, frustrations, or limitations. A person who constantly criticizes others may be struggling with deep insecurity. A person who seeks conflict everywhere may be carrying unresolved anger. A person who is controlling may be driven by fear. A person who is unkind may have experienced unkindness throughout their own life. When you begin to see these possibilities, your perspective changes. Instead of immediately reacting with anger, you become curious. You begin asking yourself what may be influencing that person's behavior. You stop assuming that every negative action is a personal attack against you. This shift alone can prevent countless unnecessary emotional battles. One of the reasons understanding reduces anger is because it increases empathy. Empathy is the ability to see a situation from another person's perspective. It allows you to step outside your own emotions and consider what someone else may be experiencing. Empathy does not require agreement. It does not mean accepting harmful behavior. It simply means making an effort to understand before judging. Many conflicts escalate because neither side attempts to understand the other. Each person focuses exclusively on their own feelings, their own viewpoint, and their own interpretation of events. They become so committed to being right that they stop trying to understand. As communication breaks down, frustration increases. Understanding often becomes the missing ingredient that could have prevented the conflict from growing. A wise person recognizes that people act according to their level of awareness, maturity, and emotional development. Not everyone has learned healthy communication. Not everyone has developed emotional intelligence. Not everyone has mastered self-control. Some individuals are still operating from patterns they learned years ago. They may repeat behaviors that they have never examined or questioned. Understanding this reality helps you respond with greater patience. Think about children learning to walk. When they stumble and fall, we do not become angry because we understand that they are still developing. We recognize that mistakes are part of the process in many ways. Adults are similar. While they may be physically mature, many are still growing emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Understanding this does not eliminate accountability, but it encourages realistic expectations. Another powerful benefit of understanding people is that it reduces personalization. Many individuals assume that everything others do is about them. If someone is distant, they assume rejection. If someone is irritated, they assume blame. If someone is quiet, they assume disapproval. In reality, many people's actions have far more to do with their own internal struggles than with anyone else. Understanding this truth prevents you from carrying emotional burdens that do not belong to you. History's greatest leaders often possessed remarkable understanding of human nature. They recognized that influence requires more than authority. It requires insight into how people think, feel, and behave. They understood that anger rarely changes people, but understanding often opens doors that hostility cannot. There is also freedom in accepting that everyone is fighting battles you cannot see. Some people hide their struggles behind smiles. Others hide them behind anger, pride, or silence. The more you understand this reality, the more compassionate you become. Compassion does not make you weak, it makes you wise. It allows you to respond with perspective rather than impulse. Understanding people does not mean allowing yourself to be mistreated. It does not mean tolerating abuse or abandoning healthy boundaries. You can understand someone's pain while still protecting your peace. You can recognize their struggles without accepting harmful behavior. Goal is not to remove accountability, but to remove unnecessary anger. When understanding increases, anger often decreases. The desire to retaliate weakens. The need to prove yourself diminishes. The urge to take everything personally fades. You begin seeing people not merely as sources of frustration, but as human beings navigating their own challenges, limitations, and imperfections. This perspective creates patience where there was once irritation, compassion where there was once resentment, and wisdom where there was once anger. It becomes much harder to remain consumed by anger when you genuinely understand the humanity behind the behavior. One of the biggest reasons people become angry, offended, and emotionally disturbed is because they spend more energy protecting their ego than protecting their peace. The ego constantly seeks validation, recognition, respect, and superiority. It wants to be right, appreciated, admired, and acknowledged. Whenever these desires are threatened, the ego reacts. It becomes defensive, offended, and combative. As a result, many people sacrifice their inner peace simply to satisfy the demands of their pride. Every day, people enter arguments they do not need to enter. They respond to comments they do not need to respond to. They fight battles that add no value to their lives. Why? Because their ego convinces them that every challenge requires a response and every disagreement requires a defense. The ego whispers, "You cannot let them say that. You must prove them wrong. You have to win this argument. You cannot allow them to think they are right." In pursuing victory, they lose something far more valuable, their peace of mind. Peace and ego often move in opposite directions. The stronger your attachment to your ego, the easier it becomes for others to disturb you. Every criticism feels personal. Every disagreement feels insulting. Every rejection feels humiliating. Every correction feels like an attack. The ego transforms ordinary situations into emotional battles because it interprets everything as a threat to self-importance. Consider how many conflicts begin with a simple desire to be right. Two people disagree, and instead of seeking understanding, they become determined to win. The discussion shifts from finding truth to protecting pride. Neither person wants to admit a mistake. Neither person wants to appear weak. As emotions rise, the original issue becomes secondary. The real battle becomes a struggle between egos. A wise person understands that not every argument deserves participation. Sometimes the greatest display of strength is choosing not to engage. Many people assume that walking away from conflict is weakness, but often it is evidence of maturity. It takes far more self-control to remain calm than to react impulsively. It takes greater confidence to ignore an insult than to retaliate against it. The ego constantly seeks external confirmation. It wants people to respect it, admire it, and validate it. This creates a dangerous dependency because you begin placing your emotional well-being in the hands of others. If people praise you, you feel good. If they criticize you, you feel bad. If they recognize your contributions, you feel valuable. If they overlook you, you feel offended. In this state, Your peace becomes fragile because it depends on circumstances you cannot control. Peace, on the other hand, comes from within. It does not require constant approval from others. It does not depend on winning every debate or receiving recognition for every achievement. Peace comes from knowing your value without needing everyone else to confirm it. When you possess this kind of inner security, many things that once disturbed you lose their power. One of the clearest signs of emotional growth is the ability to let minor offenses pass without reaction. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Not every criticism requires a defense. Not every insult deserves a response. The ego demands action because it wants to protect its image. Wisdom asks a different question: is responding worth disturbing my peace? Many people carry emotional burdens for years because their ego refuses to let go. They replay old arguments, remember past insults, and hold on to resentment long after the event has ended. Their pride keeps reopening wounds that time could have healed. Meanwhile, the person who offended them may have moved on completely. The result is that they continue suffering over situations that no longer exist. Protecting your peace requires learning the art of letting go. It means accepting you will sometimes be misunderstood. People may judge your intentions incorrectly. They may criticize decisions they do not understand. They may fail to recognize your efforts. They may say things that are unfair or inaccurate. If your ego demands justice in every situation, you will spend much of your life frustrated. But if your peace becomes the priority, you will learn when to address issues and when to release them. There is tremendous freedom in no longer needing to prove yourself to everyone. The ego is constantly performing, constantly defending, constantly comparing. Peace has no such burden. Peace allows you to be secure without competition. It allows you to succeed without arrogance and fail without losing your identity. It allows you to receive criticism without collapsing and praise without becoming dependent on it. Another important truth is that people who are controlled by their ego are often easy to manipulate. Anyone who knows what offends them can control their emotions. Anyone who understands their insecurities can provoke reactions. But when peace becomes more important than pride, this control disappears. You stop reacting to every provocation. You stop giving people authority over your emotional state. You become less predictable because your responses are guided by wisdom rather than wounded pride. Life becomes significantly lighter when you stop carrying the weight of unnecessary battles. You conserve your energy for what truly matters. You focus on growth rather than proving yourself. You seek understanding rather than victory. You value tranquility more than validation. This does not mean becoming passive or allowing people to mistreat you. It means choosing your battles carefully and refusing to allow your ego to turn every challenge into a conflict. The people who experience the greatest emotional freedom are not those who never face criticism, disagreement, or disrespect. They are those who have learned that peace is too valuable to sacrifice for pride. They understand that protecting their inner calm is more important than protecting their ego, and because of that understanding, they move through life with a stability that no opinion, insult, or disagreement can easily destroy.